Sitting in class, watching those who are the complexion of the opposite leave. Again, as they relieve themselves from being class full of those who are the complexion of me. It wasn't hard to see that the inequality symbols of less than and greater than that I was learning in math not only applied to numbers, they applied to colors. Shades of brown, invisibly crowned with dunce, became fitted to heads that seemed to learn at exponentially slower rates than others. Though we were an integrated school, the gifted segregated themselves to the white flight of Jim Crow's wings, enacting their civil rights of separate but equal PLCs that excluded NAACPs because this was the norm. Until one young white lady who taught Algebra 1 in 8th grade gave two black boys a math test that went against the pedagogy of low expectations. She saw in us the same desire to learn. It was just wrapped in brown skin that identified as black. She chose to see color because she recognized that everyone that was in her advanced math classes were white. She chose to rescue us from a curriculum that handed out 6 degrees of separation: Southern, black, poor, male, non-gifted, therefore unlikely. She changed Chester and my life. It wasn't as if I didn't believe I could do it. She believed I could. Her expectations of me tore down walls built by bricks of shame, inequity, and what's wrong with me. Her expectations of me exposed me to a land of possibilities found only in books where fairy tales exist, and those that were there were awakened by a kiss. She became the Peter Pan to 2 lost boys, giving us access to Neverland. In this land where I had never been, all those that were there were expected to succeed. They were expected in high school and to take honors in AP classes. One of the proudest moments of my life was walking down my high school during freshman orientation with my mom, when a welcoming tone of normalcy reached out to me like a slick arm stretch at the movies and said, "Hi, I'm your freshman English 9 teacher." In one split second, the eloquence of Malcolm, the bravery of Rosa, the championing of Du Bois courageously spoke, "No, I have honors," as if my voice was Frederick Douglass escaping slavery. After being on this earth for 14 years, it was in that English honors class that I first learned about the Holocaust through our summer book reading Night by Elie Wiesel. All I had ever known about was the enslavement of Africans, but had no clue that darkness had descended upon the face of a people whose skin complexion was the very opposite of the book's name. This blew my mind as the winds of equity began to thrust me into competitive GPAs of those of my white peers, because honors and AP classes gave you a half to a whole grade point. Could this be the reason why brown faces performed so poorly? Because the bandwidth carrying their information was on dial-up speed, while fibers of interconnected networks sped up the advancement of those privy to a system that supported them and not those that looked like me? The expectations of my teacher had me in class asking for a homemade deer jerky because it was hunting season. I began to walk the trail of tears, paved for by my ancestors, just to be draped in cords that used to shackle them, but now loosed me to pursue the dreams of a king. In 8th grade, I fell in love with math. And 20 years later, I find myself teaching in the same subject and grade where one teacher's expectations of me changed the course of my life. Thank you, Mrs. Simmons. If you didn't get it from my spoken word, or get the subject from my spoken word, today I want to talk about teacher expectations. I grew up in a very small town in eastern North Carolina that was very segregated in the 90s. I was a bright young man and I loved learning. My mom had a nickname for me. She called me Mastermind. because I love being right. But as I matriculated into middle school, I noticed that there were some students that were being pulled out of class, and I later found out that these were the gifted students. I sat in class wondering, why wasn't I pulled out? Because my grades and my performance was just as great as theirs was. So in 8th grade, Mrs. Simmons gave Chester and I a math test to see if we could test into Algebra 1. I passed and I was let into the class. It was the most struggling times of my life, other than being in grad school right now, at the moment, because the gifted kids took algebra, pre-algebra, the year before, while I was in a 7th grade standard math class. Mrs. Simmons putting me in that class changed my life. I was in the class with other students who were going to take AP and honors classes when they got to high school. And because of that, because of her choice, again, my life forever changed. So what is expectation? Expectation is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. In 1964, Robin Rosenthal performed an experiment. He told teachers he was giving their students a special test called the Harvard Test of Inflected Acquisition. He told teachers that the exam would detect kids who were about to grow by incredible means intellectually. The only problem was that Rosenthal lied to the teachers because the test did nothing of the sorts. Based on those results, teachers began to treat the kids differently by giving them more attention, smiling at them more, giving them more time on tests, and touching them frequently. As a result, the students' IQs grew, and the only variable that was introduced was the teacher expectations. Our current reality. Our district largest subgroups of race is made up of 7% Asian, 25% Hispanic, 28% white, and 38% black, while its teachers are made of 3% Hispanic, 25% black, and 70% white, with the majority of teachers across America being white females. Some people get a little stiff when you start talking about race. We even as teachers will describe every characteristic of a child without mentioning the child's race. You know that tall girl with the frizzy hair who runs track? Is she black or white or Hispanic or Asian? What is she? Because I still don't know who you're talking about. You know, we dance around this. We describe everything, but we won't say what her race is. In another study found by Gershenson, Halt, and Papa George, their findings state that there's direct evidence that demographic mismatch influences how a teacher forms expectations over students' long-run investments. They also state while a teacher's perceptions reflect their current views of abilities or traits, their expectations are prone to becoming self-fulfilling prophecies if, for example, based on inaccurate forecasts, a teacher shifts scarce resources such as time and effort to another student. How real is that? I mean, as a black teacher that only makes up 2% of the teaching population, I'm like a unicorn. I'm a rarity. Quick fun fact, you know, anybody that watched the show This Is Us, comes on NBC, listen, I'm not a crier, but by all means, I really don't cry. But that show, you're going to tear up unless you're just straight up dead. The show's location is themed to be in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Steelers fans. While living in Pittsburgh, I taught in Bethel Park High School. That's the fun fact. For 1 year, as a 9th grade Algebra 1 teacher. So when Randall says, the black guy in the show says, this is the whitest place on earth, he wasn't joking. 97% of the school's population is white. When I first walked around the school, I had a couple of black students downstairs in the cafeteria on the third floor pointing up to me like, look, there's a black guy. Like I was a Bigfoot, because they'd never seen a black male teacher before in the high school, probably ever in their life. That's my place. But the people there are some of the nicest people on earth. I could hold another talk about what I learned about my experiences, but we don't have time for that. But what I did learn was that my expectations of myself as a teacher were low, because I thought because of the majority's color, they were better teachers than me. After about 5 months, that's how long it took, 5 months, and a long, hard talk with my roommate, I realized that I was a great teacher, not because of my color, but because of my expectations. But the reality is that most of our multiculturalisms that happen on a daily basis that we experience are at our schools. It isn't in our neighborhoods. It isn't in our places of worship normally, because as the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. So your black reality, your white reality, your Hispanic reality, your Asian reality is not the reality of someone of a different race. So it's not surprising that sometimes we do not expect much from certain subgroups, because that's all we know and know about them. And the reality is, do we really know them? Mrs. Simmons gave me a chance. And all I'm asking is that you do the same for your students. When I left Pittsburgh to come to Charlotte, I looked up where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to a diverse school, and when I saw the demographics of Piedmont Middle School, shout out to Piedmont, I was like, this is an A+ school with 60% of the students black. I had to come and see what this place looked like, because it was a rarity for me to see something like that. And what I've seen since I've been at the school for 3 years is that what makes this place different is that when you come here, you are expected to be the best. While there, I started a club while there at Piedmont a year ago. I started a club for the highest achieving black boys in 6th grade called Aftermath. It's a play on words, which because I realized that the highest level of math at our school, which is the Math 1-2 class, we had little to no representation from our black males. When I got their 7th grade EOG scores, I was so disappointed to see that they had fallen. I mean, many of them had fallen from 5s to 4s and almost 10 percentile to 11 percentile points. When I went around the room and I asked them, why did your scores fall like this? They all reverberated the same thing. In 5th grade, I really wanted to get into this school. And then after I was here, I was like, man, I can chill now. I looked at them and reminded them that they now have a new expectation from me and for themselves, and that is to be in a Math 1 class in the 8th grade, or the highest level of math in the 8th grade at Piedmont, which would be a Math 1-2 class. What they taught me was simple. If I don't put expectations on them, they will fall through the cracks again. And so I pose this question to you. What do you expect from your kids? Before I leave, I want to leave you with this final thought. My journey through high school and through school in general as a black male was an arduous one. There were many ups and downs and many expectations and perceptions that I had to change about me and black males in general. And like me, there were so many black males. Like me, there are so many black males who are struggling to identify with you because you may not look like them. What I've learned is that what they all and we all can identify with is love. So though I can only talk about me, and my demographics, this last piece I want to leave with you. Think about the black male in your school. Think about that one that stands out high in every statistic that should be low. And I want to ask you this in my farewell. Will you fight for me? I'm in a war with very few allies because of all lies. I'm portrayed as a troublemaker with a learning disability in need of medication, so I usually end up in separate settings. Please take time to understand my character from first point of view. Then you will see the plot of Rising Action themed by fictional narratives that have me playing the antagonist, and they wonder why my mood is anticlimactic. What a foreshadowing irony. Epiphany, will you fight for me? Because there's a 66% chance of me coming from a poorer neighborhood than my white peers. And because of that, most schools I go to seem to be haunted with the idea that life can't live here. Will you fight for me? Because many don't expect me to rise even though I'm always in the fire. Will you be the hand like vice grips refusing to let me become a falling star? Because history is so quick to point and identify my plight and my enslavement, but never show me as the king I used to be before hands that rob cradles snatched me from motherland. Will you fight for me? They say they are trying to close the achievement gap, but the only gap that needs to be reached is the one between ears and chest cavities. Will you fight for me? Because though I only make up 9% of kindergartners kindergartners in the U.S., I make up 48 to 50% of suspensions. And in some districts, I am more than 10 times as likely to be arrested for the same crime when my skin is brown. Will you fight for me? Because if these are my odds, is it not odd that even prison's prime goal is to have a composite of whole brown faces fractioned off by negative interactions with the system, counting on me, on my failure, proclaiming it's natural? I'm positive you can do the math. Will you fight for me? Because fighting for me is ensuring that someone will stand before you and ask, will you fight for me? Because if you don't, who can I expect to fight for me? Thank you.